Right, a very good evening. It is another wonderful Thursday evening. And yes, I'm your host, Pakamani, bringing you F-Stop Live. And yes, you've read the title for this week's episode, and that is titled We, ex- base, we Exhibiting the Art of Documentary Photography. Yes, you heard that right. We're looking at documentary photography, and we're going to have a guest today. His name is Mark. So we're going to introduce Mark a bit later. But the one thing that we're going to do that is slightly different for this week's show is that we're going to introduce a bit of a did you know? Because, I mean, at the end of the day, we'd like to know more about who the people are behind Godox and what is Godox SA itself. So, without actually further ado, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to bring it up onto the screen. And yes, there we go. We have our fact for the day. It says there, did you know Godox was founded in 1993? So that is something that is of utmost importance of us knowing, and has since become a leading brand in the photography industry, known for its innovative and affordable lighting solutions that cater to both amateur and professional photographers worldwide. So we're not talking just about something that is just happening on the local scene. We're talking about something that is happening internationally, and international is where we are with Godox SA. And yes, good people, we have a variety of products that you can actually try out. As a matter of fact, for this evening's lighting, so what I've gone and done is that I've actually just enlisted the assistance of the Lightmon 6, and I've taken the bicolor ones as opposed to the RGB. And hey, as you can see for yourself, I am all lit up, and I'm enjoying the fact that it's just simply one light. And that's what you can actually get for yourselves in terms of just understanding just a bit more about what SA has to offer. But as I said, for this evening, we are going to bring on our guest. That is Mark. And Mark is a seasoned photographer and is also a lecturer at Walter Sisulu under the banner of journalism. But I'm not going to spoil the fun. And what I'm going to do is that I am going to bring Mark up onto the screen, and then we have a chat with Mark. Hi, Mark. A very good evening to you. How are you this evening?
Hi, good evening, Pakamani. I'm fine, thanks. All well. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I had a bit of health scare this, what we call food poisoning. So, fortunately enough, we have good doctors who can help and flush these things out. So that is something that is extremely important. But here we are today, and we're able to have a conversation. And I was thinking, what's going to happen should I not be able to conduct this interview? But hey, here I am, saved by good doctors.
Sorry to hear that. You can never be too careful these days. I remember picking up a bug in the Transkei many years ago when I was covering the funeral of one of the chiefs in Mount Frere, and
All
I
right.
picked up a, a bug from it's quite scary.
It definitely is. And, with the medical fraternity, under siege at the moment with, adequate or inadequate people, so I can definitely say that I'm extremely thankful that I'm able to do the show tonight. And most importantly, not just about me, I'm able to have a conversation with you. So, in getting in with some of the questions, someone is like just getting straight into the conversation, but we'd like to know just outside of the profession who Mark is.
Well, I suppose I wouldn't. I don't actually know how to answer that because I'm a teacher.
All
I'm
right.
a father.
Mm-hmm.
Two sons. I just got back from the UK last week. My eldest son was married in the UK, and
Okay.
I just got back last week. So I don't have grandkids yet, and I'm Yeah, basically that's it. I don't know what else to say to answer. I probably could say that I'm an avid historian, although
Okay.
it's not my vocation. I do take a keen interest in history, in politics, in sociological politics, as well
All
as
right.
in urban planning, urban spaces, and things like that. And
No.
I actually love culture and art, so I draw.
Mm.
I like to work with my hands. I do some woodwork projects. I'm starting up with that again. I'm rebuilding my toolkit, and
Mm.
yeah, basically that's it. But I mean, photography is my primary passion.
Okay. I love that. There's one thing that actually brings us in common, and that is the love for photography. And apart from that, you spoke about a very nice vocation, where you do a bit of woodwork. And, a lot of people would not really want to associate because of different stigmas. I mean, even around photography, there is a stigma that says, why do you want to become a photographer? You're just going to take pictures of people. But, if you, as you say, you're avid historian, if we go back to 1976, a very iconic picture that emerged from that time, and it's become timeless because anyone who sees that picture is connected to that particular day of June 16 and what June 16 in and of itself means. So yeah, that is some of the things that I think we're going to be delving into, in terms of what we're going to be talking about. So, like, one of the things that I would like to know is that, when it comes to photography, what would you say influenced the interest towards photography?
Well, I love reading, and my one of my late uncles, Uncle Jehan Kader, he had
Mm.
a fantastic collection of books, and among these books, he had a collection of photography books,
Right.
and quite a few of them were dedicated to Life magazine. They were hardcover Life magazine books, which looked at documentary and news photography, let's call it that. And I was fascinated by those books. Now, 90% of the photographs in those books were in black and white. And from a single image, you could obviously pick out what was happening. Most of them, I think the book was published in 1975, 1976. I've since managed to acquire a copy of my own. And many of the books related to major events that happened in the world. But another book that he had was called um, something Hollywood Glamour. I can't remember the main title, but it was Hollywood Glamour. And these were portraits that were taken of Hollywood film stars, mostly
All
black
right.
and white, but
Mm.
such sumptuous, beautiful portraits. That I was mesmerized. And my uncle Johan was actually a brilliant photographer in his own right.
All
He would
right.
ask me to count how many lights were used in the image. And I could never understand what he meant by that. But then he would point to me to look for the catchlight in the eye, the light on the back of the head, and
Right.
a softer light coming from the front. And then he would show me how to read shadows and things like that. And he wasn't a technically trained photographer. He
All
was
right.
a BSc, Bachelor of Science graduate, and a teacher. He had numerous other degrees in teaching, B.Ed, and Bachelor of Education, and that type of thing. But he was a very
Mm.
keen photographer, and he was the projectionist at the local cinema in Kimberley.
Okay.
So he would often be discussing lighting, shadow, and mood and so on in pictures. And I was quite young at the time, so many of these conversations went over my head. But as I grew older, I began to understand, and many of those things have stuck with me, you know.
All
And
right.
that's I would say that was probably my influence, and my family members and so on. When people would whip out a little camera, they had those flat little 110 Kodak 110, what they called Instamatics. And
Yes.
those were the main cameras that were used in the families, you know, to capture snapshots.
Right.
But at the age I am now, those snapshots have become gold because,
Okay.
you know, you don't get them anymore. And also, as we are growing older and we're trying to reunite the family, we are now looking for those snapshots and we're scanning them, and we are trying to assemble family albums and trying to find the context. Do you remember whose birthday this was? When did this happen? Who's this?
Right.
So, so photography has become a very important visual artifact of an age that is rapidly disappearing. You know,
All right.
and I'm talking about
Mm,
as you said the other day when we spoke, that you view a photograph as something that is printed. And that's how I view it as well. It's actually what it, you know, what it is. A photograph is something that is printed. It's something that has been painted with light. So those are
definitely.
the influences, you know, in
Mm.
my photographic journey.
No, definitely. So we all have different ways in which people got into photography, and the different sort of influences that come about from people. As I said, family played a very big role in terms of you getting into it. Whereas a lot of people is a matter of, if I look at today, the bottom line is, how much can I make? It's not so much about how dear a memory is to a person, and it's often, like something extremely sad. But there's something that I really liked in terms of that, how do you evaluate how many lights were there, and how would you say light plays a big role in photography?
I think more important than the light is the effect the light has, because what I love the shadow
All right.
that a light casts.
Mm.
Um, Now, I'm not particularly fond of cell phone photography, but the one advantage of cell phone photography is that it's always with you. Most of the time, your
Right.
cell phone is with you,
Yes.
and it allows you to take photographs in places where they might not necessarily allow you to take your camera.
Yeah.
So I look at, for example, when I'm walking in the shopping mall, and then I look at how light falls on tiles, reflections, and things like that. So for me, it's patterns. It's how light falls on somebody's face. So light is very important in that sense. And I often make my own light shapers, because sometimes I don't find a light shaper that does what I wanted to do. So I would end up cutting shapes in little cards or in little plastic bottle tops and things like that, and I modify it just to get a certain effect.
All right.
Yeah, that's what I do. So for me, light is important, but more important than the light, like I say, is the effect the light has on the subject, especially
Mm.
the shadow, because it's the shadow that gives us that three-dimensionality of in an
Definitely.
image. That is what I like. I Most of the time I use one light, most of the time,
Oh.
and maybe a reflector, you know. But I
Mm.
would like to get back to 3-point lighting and maybe multi-lighting and things like that. And I am looking at a few products. I heard you speak earlier that how you lit you using one of these little uh, Lightmons.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know, I bought a flat panel, like a Godox flat panel. I can't think of the name offhand, but it's bigger than a Lightermont, and I
Yeah.
use that from time to time when I don't take my flash with me. Then I have that because it's nice and flat. It fits in the bag. It takes one battery. It's quite powerful. Even in
Definitely.
daylight, it gives a nice light when you want to kill a bit of shadow in the shade and so on. So yeah, so while I do like natural light photography, there are times when I want to get a bit dramatic. So
Okay.
yeah.
So with that, if you had to choose, because I picked up with most of your work is that you do have a balance between black and white and color photos. Which one, if you had to choose, would you say this is actually my preference? But I on either side I'm good, but this is the one I like.
Sorry, you're breaking up a bit there.
All right. I'm saying we've seen some of your work where you have black and white photos, you have color pictures as well. So if you had to choose, as much as you seem to have a balance of both, which one would be preference?
Black and white. I like black and white photography because for me, with black and white, you it almost forces the viewer to actually look at the subject.
All right.
Now, with these, and when I buy film, 35mm film, I always buy black and white.
Okay.
Digital photography spoils us quite a bit because it allows you to do both. You can shoot in color and change it to black and white afterwards. But ever since I now switched fully to digital, especially with the mirrorless cameras, I keep my camera in black and white.
Okay.
So that when I look through the viewfinder, I see black and white.
All right.
And it does change the way you photograph. For me, it does, because I tend to get my exposures better. I tend to see certain details that I wouldn't otherwise see much better. And even with wedding photography. So if a client wants color, I do have the color option in the raw file.
Right.
Yeah, but for me, black and white. Black and white to me is how shall I put this? It's a document. It becomes it actually, if it's executed correctly, it becomes a historical document. If, like I said, people want the client, whoever wants the color version, then we can give it to them.
Now, definitely, if there's anything I like in terms of what you just said, is that the option of being able to nowadays shoot in black and white and then convert it to color later. Whereas, as you say, the one thing that a lot of people like to do is they want to shoot in color and then, then would decide on black and white. Because the one thing that I've seen is the balance that one has with light in terms of exactly where do you need the light to be on your subject. Exactly, there's a greater control of the subject when it's black and white compared to the biggest issue I have with color is there's a light spill everywhere, and when that happens, I feel a sense that, I'm not going to get this shot very well. And, there's one thing that, I think a lot of photographers do, and I think also it's something you do, is that photographers are extremely selfish when it comes to their work, to a point that they are perfectionists in that selfishness, that how much of you will you say is, I prefer to get it right in camera than to do processing?
Yeah, I prefer that as well. Most of the time I post my photographs to Instagram straight out of camera. The only thing I do is to reduce the size.
Okay.
I don't use. I no longer use Adobe products.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've got just on the Mac of the generic app that comes with the Mac. I don't even know what it's called, iPhoto or something. I use that to reduce the file size.
Okay.
Yeah, if I do require extensive editing, then I ask my son to do it, or I take it to somebody to do it for me. But I like to do. Look, you've got to understand. At this particular stage of my life, while I still do work for clients and so on, most of the work I do is for myself.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, these little cameras are what I walk around with, 35mm cameras, and I've got about 12 or 13 of them. You know, I don't know how to place this here so that you can see. They're all loaded with black and white film. You know,
Okay.
so yeah.
I'm actually going to
Some of
pull
these
up
I've had for many years. I've had, you know.
I'm actually going to do something just now with one of your photos, and I'm going to ask you then to just take us through the inspiration behind that specific photo. And as much as, you know, we live in a country where load shedding, okay, for the past 2.5 months, we haven't had that per se, but, you know, it's definitely something. But let me just pull this up so that we can look at it. Right. There we go.
Oh, yeah. Yes, that image is right down the road from where I work, and it's outside the East London branch of the South African Reserve Bank. And if you look at that power box, you'll see that it's nicely tiled and everything, but the intestines have been removed. That power box has been effectively disemboweled. And it in a sense, to me, I drove past that many times in various states of decay and vandalism. And the one day when I drove past it, so the doors had been completely ripped off, and that's when I stopped and I captured that image. And in a sense, to me, that kind of summarizes our society to a large extent, where you have a beautifully tiled exterior, but a hollowed out interior. So the actual purpose of that box is to service people with electricity, which it can no longer do. But the covering is quite neat and sort of new and neat, and marble tiles and things like that. So that's why I captured that. To me, that's a sad image, actually.
Yeah, you know, because we as people are supposed to look after our environment, looks after our society, and you know, its design was supposed to be a beautiful thing throughout, but now we have a situation where it was really this beautiful marvel, but no longer really is, because of how, as you say, you know, the intestines have been stripped out. You know, these are some of the things that, you know, some people might not look at, you know. But in looking at all of this, you know, and again, as I said, we are going to go through a couple of photos that you have taken, and, you know, this documentary sort of style of photography, what would you say drew you most to the particular genre?
Well, like I say, the magazines that I had access to when I was young, Time Life magazines, which are no longer printed. I think Time magazine is still there, but Life magazine is no longer in print. I don't think they are. And also National Geographic as a magazine. I see National Geographic from time to time, but unfortunately CNA has closed down, so I don't get my National Geographic anymore. But that is what actually attracted me to storytelling through photography. And what we have today with the cell phone, despite the fact that we have this very powerful tool in our pocket with us at all times, we are taking photographs of ourselves and not of society. And that is straight out of, I think it's Greek mythology, the story of Narcissus, who so fell in love with his own image that he fell into the river and drowned. So we are drowning in a sea, in an ocean of images of self.
Right.
I wrote something on one of my blogs, and I can't remember the exact figure, but there are, I think, 2 billion selfies uploaded to social media every day. And these images are meaningless, whereas I believe, and I'm not saying that my photographs are of primary importance, but photographs of society are of primary importance. But if we are looking at ourselves all the time, then we don't see society. And that disturbs me, because I think that photographers, true photographers, are actually the chroniclers of what is happening in society at large. And that is why
Right.
I like documentary photography, or the use of photography to document daily life. That's what I like.
Definitely.
And that's what draws me to it quite strongly. Even when I do studio work, I speak with the client and I try to tell the story through the image. What are
Right.
they feeling? Why are they doing this? And so on. I'm actually busy with a book right now, which I'm going to print at own cost, just one copy for an exhibition I'm hoping to host in August. But
Okay.
I'm still, I have spoken to a number of people. I have prints. I have got the prints for an exhibition, and I'll let you know about it if it comes to fruition, because there's very little support for artists in this country, and photography, unfortunately, with the advent of cell phone technology, I think people look down on photography because anybody can do it. You can just push a button. But I am drawn to documentary photography because of the historical importance that it holds, not for us today, but for people in 50 years' time. They're going to look at your photographs and my photographs, and they're going to ponder what exactly was happening here.
Right. So let's bring up another photo of yours that you also took. And for me, this, speaks about something that is extremely important. And I'm going to take a wild guess. You correctly. I'm looking at this trolley, seemingly abandoned. But, when you talk about a trolley nowadays, it having that low to no item is where we are as an economic society, But I won't put words in your mouth. Take us through this.
Well, that was captured in the West Bank here in East London, the West Bank suburb, on New Year's Day, 1st of January 2024.
Right.
It's an incomplete image, actually, because I wanted to photograph the guy with his trolley, because he was standing on the side of the trolley, on the right-hand side as we're looking at it now, and he was looking towards me, and we were actually speaking. He was asking me, am I a journalist or whatever, because he saw me walking with a camera. And I said, no, I'm not a journalist. I'm just walking around capturing New Year's Day in East London. And I asked him if I could take a photograph of him, and he declined. But when he walked away from the trolley, that's when I thought it actually makes a good, it actually makes a good image. And unfortunately, on the day that I captured this, I wasn't shooting in RAW. I just had the camera set to JPEG.
Okay.
So I don't have the color version. It was a very gloomy day, but I captured the photograph of this trolley, and this guy was walking around asking people for food and things like that. And in the context of our nation, it was a white guy. So
Okay.
that's basically that niche. Yeah.
No, that's something that's very interesting because, when I look at a trolley, and I remember having a conversation with someone and I said, the trolleys nowadays are empty. And when you talk about how empty they are, they also speak to the reality of where we are as a society in terms of,
Yeah.
you ask the person, where are you going to get the next meal? Where are you going to get this? Where are you going to get that, And that's basically, as I said, your story, the story you tell. I think I'm coming alive with it, even with the next picture that we're going to look at. You tell a story. This is what you mean by documentary. This looks often a bent space with the young gentleman that is in that photo, and if I'm not, that's a plastic bag, hopefully with food. Take us. There's this one.
Yeah, this was captured on the 29th of December 2023. I was with
Right.
I think the 28th or the 29th of December. It was the last photographic walkabout I had with my son, the one who just got married now.
All right.
And we were driving around. I had to go fit. I had to drop off something at work, and as we were going, coming back from Walter Sisulu, I saw this guy sitting in a burnt out, I think it's a substation or something there in Arcadia. And I stopped and I went over and I spoke to him. I didn't have my camera with me. And I asked him if he's okay and so on. And we were just chatting. And then I asked him if I could capture the image. And he said yes. And he told me he was quite hungry. I didn't have much money on me. I think I had about 23 Rand on me. And I gave him the 23 Rand. And, I captured this image. And his name was William.
Okay.
If I remember correctly. But you know what struck me about that? It was quite cold, actually. And that place was still smoldering inside. So they were burning stuff there for warmth. But he was alone there. He was waiting for somebody. But this is an image that saddens me because he's quite a young guy. He wasn't drunk or anything, and he wasn't on any substances that I could tell. But a guy on the 28th of December in 21st century South Africa with little hope of prospects, and he's surrounded by the debris of wasted lives. You could see all the syringes and all sorts of things laying inside that burnt out substation, right next to the rail line there in Arcadia. Yeah, it's quite sad.
No, as you say, the thing about documentary photography is it takes you to the reality of the things that are happening on the ground when it comes to life. And, it's one of those things that, unfortunately, as a person who happens to encounter or witness it, it's not a case where you say, I can ultimately just help as, you see the situation. But, it's a really sad sort of state, and quite a number of people would be like, they don't know. But this, for me, epitomizes exactly what you document is the story you're telling. But a quick question before I pull up other pictures from work we've done. Have you done an exhibition? If not, even if you have done one, are you planning on doing any soon?
Yes, I've had 2 exhibitions already, both on the same subject, which is on gender-based violence. Or I don't actually like the term gender-based violence, but let's say violence against women, particularly sexual violence. So I've had 2 exhibitions on that same theme, and I'm planning the third now. Mainly due to public demand.
Okay.
That I'm having this from some of the participants themselves. So the visitors that were here earlier The lady who was here, she's one of the people who's the planner, and she's helping me plan this for Women's Day in August.
Okay.
So yes, I am planning that, and I'm also planning a documentary. I'm not calling it street. I'm not calling it documentary photography. I'm calling it the Streets of East London street photography exhibition. Yeah. So at the moment, most of the images are up in the journalism department at Walter Sisulu. I've just pinned them against the wall, but I'm working on getting proper backing boards and things for the prints, because at the moment they are warping and bending and all sorts of things. But it's costly. I mean, geez, you know. Mainly, look, you'll know it yourself. You probably love photography, and I mean, most of the time you do photography for yourself, and that's so. Most of the stuff comes out of my pocket, you know, and photography is actually when it's executed the way I see it, and I mean, this is my personal view. Photography is a conversation with the world. It's a conversation between the photographer, the subject, and the world, because you don't know who is going to see those images, and people can interpret the images in any way they wish. But that's not really my problem. The hurdle that I've got to overcome is I've got to convince you as my subject to pose in a certain way, or to agree to be photographed doing what you were doing. That is my hurdle. And photography is communication. It is probably one of the most misunderstood forms of communication in the world today. And I have a very real fear that we, with all the other forms of communication that we're losing, we are going to lose photography. Photography is about us. It's about people. And
Definitely.
you know, people are taking photographs of their toenails, of their food, of all sorts of strange things, man. Posing next to a car with a bow on. And there are thousands of these images uploaded every day, and they are, for the most part, they are absolutely meaningless, because they do not describe the reality of society. And I think photographers, you mentioned earlier that photographers are selfish, and I think definitely they are, you know, because they don't have things like this, discussion groups. And, you know, the photographic clubs are largely very exclusive and elite.
Right.
There's no place in a photography club for somebody who comes with a thing like this, you know, for snapshots.
Definitely.
You know,
but
yeah.
On that thought, there's another question that I have here. You know, how to handle the ethical considerations when photographic sensitive subjects or situations?
I didn't get that.
How do you handle ethical considerations when it comes to photographic sensitive subjects or situations? Because earlier I did mention about the correctiveness that we need to look at when we talk about gender-based violence, to say, listen, gender-based violence, let's call it women abuse, let's not decorate it. So when it comes to ethical considerations when photographic subjects or situations where you feel a sense that it's a tough one to stomach, you know, do you walk away from such a situation, or would you photograph it for the sake of saying, you know, this happened, this is part of history?
Look, I think it would entirely depend on the situation at hand.
All right.
I think it would entirely depend on the situation at hand. If I walk into a situation where somebody's beating up a woman, I don't think I would photograph it. I think I would probably physically intervene to stop him from beating up a woman.
Okay. Which
Um,
is, yeah,
yeah, you know, so
which is
in that way.
something.
But then,
Hmm?
yeah, carry on.
I was saying, which is something that is unfortunately not happening nowadays. I mean, as you mentioned, these little things have just found a way, in terms of just making life simpler. They've literally become the antagonists themselves, because instead of people intervening, they want to record for so-called recognition.
Well, that is true, but the primary reason for that is because we are in a state of social and cultural decline.
Right.
Societies fail because of cultural decline. There's no cultural commonality among people. You and I don't know each other. We spoke. This is the second time we're speaking, but we have found common ground through the art of photography. But
Mm,
it's, in a way, it is a very narrow path of commonality, because not
right.
everybody can afford 6, 7,000, 15,000 rand for a camera, you know. But
Mm,
everybody does have access to cell phones. Many people do have access to cell phones. But
definitely.
the the technical requirement for you to enter a particular space in photography is so
Mm,
high that it excludes people, even myself included. I remember when I was doing video many years back, I was doing corporate videos. And when we went to tender, the actual tender document was set at a specification that was so high that it excluded me purely because of the fact that I didn't have certain video equipment, despite the
mm,
fact that I could do the job. And that,
right.
unfortunately, is what is happening. And I'm not saying that people should employ guys to do their wedding if the guy only has an iPhone or the cell phone or whatever the case may be. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that our cultural departments.
Mm,
I must be careful now because you're a brand ambassador now. I must think carefully how I word this. Let's say our cultural departments within government do not support artists. They do
okay.
not. Um, you can look at my blog as well. When you just look at, for example, the types of exhibitions, photographic exhibitions that happen overseas, and people will say, yeah, but those are first world countries, which is true. And I
Right.
don't want to get into the technical definition of what first world means. So to appease the masses, so to say, I will say, okay, maybe then we are a third world country, but technically we are not. But let's not get into that. But
Mm,
our cultural departments put so much emphasis on groupings who have already succeeded
right.
that they suppress the space for people to come together over cultural. I'll stick to photography, cultural photography. There's no space for
Okay.
it.
Okay.
If the exhibitions I have held thus far, I have applied for funding through, and I won't mention the names of the agencies that I've applied to, but I've applied to 12 agencies. This is since 2014, and not one of them have stepped forward to assist me, despite the fact that everybody is um, concerned about what happens to women in society. Now,
Okay.
I'm not saying that my photographic project is the answer, but what I do with my photographs is I give a voice to certain people who have either experienced violence themselves or who knows someone has experienced violence. And, what we want to do in this country is we want to have some politician cut a ribbon, clap hands, appear in the newspaper, and pat themselves on the back to say that they've done this and that. But culturally, we are not there. And photography to me is, it is such a vital driver of the visual of what is happening in the country, and yet there's virtually no support for it.
Definitely. I'm looking at this other photo of yours that we have here, and this particular one is that we have a picture of a child that is smiling, and this is what we want to see: a child who's smiling. We want a child to experience life and say, you know what, I enjoy life, and this could be something that takes the world by storm, because we don't see children playing in the streets as much as we'd like to. But take us through the process of this one.
Okay, my wife was at a church service in Pefferville at the Good Shepherd Church there in Pefferville, and I was also in church, but I was looking at the windows, and I could see that there was good light outside. All right. And I have my little camera with me. I don't know if it's appropriate to mention brand names here, so I rather won't. Okay. Same brand that you use. And so I excused myself and I went for a walkabout in Pefferville. And this was on the 23rd of December last year that I captured this. And this kid was playing in the sand there with some broken toys and so on, and he's actually smiling at some of the kids who were following me around when I snapped this image. Okay. There's another one. There's another one that I captured there, where just further on from where he is, where a little girl was sitting and playing with a headless doll, the remnants of a doll, and she was playing there outside her the place where she lives. Yeah, and I enjoyed it. Look, a lot of my older images, because of load shedding, I lost, not that I lost, but my hard drives are in disarray. So I'm busy recovering my images, and some of the metadata is now jumbled up. So I rather sent you some of my more recent stuff than to try, because you would ask me something and I didn't want to take a chance on me remembering or not remembering where the photograph was taken and so on.
Okay. And then there's this one of the lady over here.
Oh, yes. My two sons were actually busy photographing. They were doing a fashion shoot in the East London CBD. And this young lady is the sister to one of the models. Okay. And I was just there as an observer and a chaperone, as it were. And I just thought that she had these beautiful eyebrows, and she turned. I actually wanted to catch her profile as she was looking at her sister. She was saying something to her sister. But I left my camera in the car. So I walked to the car to fetch the camera. And when I came back, she wasn't as engaged as she was previously. But I took this just at the right moment. Just as she looked at me, I snapped this image. Yeah, I can't remember the date, but I think it was last year sometime, probably November, in the East London CBD.
And then we have a final one that we're also going to look into. And I think something I like about this one is, apart from it depicting graduation, family.
Yes. Yeah. I actually have to look. I don't think I did, because sometimes I forget to set my camera to JPEG and RAW. This was at Rhodes University. We were there for a journalism conference, and these, the graduates were walking by, and I was sitting outside the canteen. And why I saw these two is because they were wearing traditional wear. Everybody else that walked past was wearing, sort of just their academic gowns, and, and a suit and a tie and that type of thing. But these two were coming on, and they actually, when they saw me approaching them with a camera, they were quite excited and so on. And I got them. I got them to stop just underneath the tree so that the top of the tree framed them nicely,
Okay.
Yeah. I'm actually sorry that I didn't have, I've got a nice 105 millimeter lens that I that would have preferred to have used. Yeah, but I just used my zoom lens, and I used it at 70 millimeters, which only stops down to f4, so I would have preferred a more blurred background, and that's the only lens I took with me when I went to Rhodes. But it was they were very accommodating. We chatted for a bit and so on. I showed them the image, and I gave them my number so that I could send them the pic, but they've never contacted me. So
such a pity, such a pity, And, another question that actually comes from these pictures is, how do you ensure your work remains authentic and truthful to the story you're telling?
I think that boils down to your principles, your personal principles. Now, because I taught my sons photography, and I always say, look, photography is a contract between yourself and the subject. And you can never actually betray the trust of your client. If you're taking photographs of a lady in a swimsuit for her own personal use, it would be very unethical. It would be inappropriate of you to sell those images to an agency for whatever purposes, despite the fact that the photographer is the owner of the image.
All right.
I believe that if you remain true to yourself and your principles, then your stories will always be authentic. People will love photography for the sake of photography and not for money. I do make money off photography, but mainly I love photography. The money comes or it doesn't come. It doesn't. It's not an issue really at this stage of my life for me. If you remain true to the art of photography, then your pictures will always be authentic. You've got to remain true to yourself, and the authenticity and the currency or the relevance of your images will always be there as long as it's relevant to you. And your personal beliefs and your ethics and so on, then it will always have relevance. I suppose it depends on the type of person that you are.
All right, so I'm just going to move a bit, still photography, but just speak a bit of lighting. So the one thing that you did mention is having had a bit of use of some of the Godox products. How would you say having used that equipment has influenced a bit of your work when it comes to what you do?
My son introduced me to he came home with two AD 200s.
Okay. My favorites.
And because look, like I say, when I need studio flashes and things like that, I would hire, because I don't do a lot of studio photography. And I do have a very, very old studio flash of my own, but it's mains powered. And then he came home from America with these Godox 8200s. And it was the first time that I'd seen these things. I had never heard of Godox before. But I was actually quite amazed at this because in terms of cost, it makes a lot more sense for me to get a couple of those and I know, especially with the 8100, which is my favorite flash. I'm looking at an 8300, but the versatility of the 8100, because of its size, you can place it almost anywhere and hide it behind a bookshelf, hide it behind almost anything, and you can create a mood lighting, you know. And if you have a couple of those, I think you could do fantastic work. And what it has done for me is make me think more about how can I, what's the word I'm looking for, this set design, lighting design for particular images, which I actually have not thought about before, you know. But it's not particularly the type of photography that I enjoy. But you know, I do have images where I show students how to, for example, with somebody wearing a hoodie, pulling the hoodie over their face, then I use the 8100. I put it directly underneath him with a little snoot, and I just pop a 1/64th pop of light into their face just to give them a frame, and it looks like this face is just popping out of the dark, you know, despite the fact that the background is well lit and so on. So in that sense, it's given me that type of thinking. But until the time that I make up my mind as to whether to get another 8100 or maybe an 8200 or an 8300, I'm sticking to one light for the moment because I like shooting with just one light. But the other one I forgot to mention that I'm thinking about is the V1, the Godox V1. So it's going to be between the V1, another 8100, 8200, or an 8300. I don't have the money to get all of them.
Okay.
But one of those are going to fall. Mainly, nice. Cost is it's probably the most value for money flashes out there on the market at the moment. Even in terms of camera brands, I think Godox beat them hands down in terms of cost and value.
Okay. Right, so we're coming to the winding down of the show, which is rather unfortunate because, you know, it's been really quite informative, you know, and, you know, one of the two last questions that I have is, what do you hope viewers take away from the photographs that we've shown here today that you have taken?
I don't know, actually. I don't know how to answer that. I mean, I'm actually quite flattered that you asked me to be on the show and talk about photography. And the fact that you've looked at those images and the questions you've asked about them and your analysis of the images of them were quite sharp. I think what I would like viewers to think about is to do more of the same, to go out. And because if more of us go out into the street doing street photography, the better it will be for all of us in the long run. Because at the moment, if you walk around with a camera in the street, people put their hands up. You know, they don't want photos. And yet we have municipalities and governments all over the world putting up cameras, and we are watched by Google cameras and Google Earth and whatever all over the show, and we're not concerned about that. But a photographer comes along, he takes an interest in you doing something, and he wants to photograph you, and you want to get violent. I think that's not on. And I think if more of us are taking an interest in each other and what we are doing and photographing those moments, then maybe that attitude will change. So I'm hoping that viewers will consider doing more street photography and more documentary photography.
All right. And then as a last question for you for the evening, is there a particular story or subject that you haven't tackled yet, but would love to explore in future?
The one that I have started and I've done some work on it, but I mean I've done it off and on for the past. What is it now? It's 2024, so I think it could be around about 2011, 2012. I started it, and the reason why it's been stuttered is because in 2012 my son left to go and work overseas. But it's about subsistence fishermen.
Okay.
I've captured quite a few images of local fishermen, speaking to them and so on. And most of the images that I have thus far have been captured on these 35 millimeter cameras, So
Okay.
I'll have to look for the negatives, and I'll have to try and remember what I did there. But that's one of the things that I would like to complete. That one. I'm working on 2 other projects at the moment that I don't want to divulge too much about at the moment because, it's a bit sensitive. But
Okay.
yeah.
No, we'll definitely respect that because I mean, sensitivity at times, and especially, I'd say in a way, go hand in glove with photography. But again, I'd like to thank you very much for your time and availing yourself and teaching us a bit about who you are and your love for photography, but most importantly, also being able to share your photos with us. And let's say if people want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
I'm on Instagram. I've got 2 Instagram handles. One is Thunderdog, THUNNDERDOGG. Thunderdog. And the reason for Thunderdog is because I wanted to write _underdog, but then I forgot the E and I just left it as Thunderdog. So spelling faux pas on my side. So it's THUNNDERDOGG on Instagram. And the project one I've got on Instagram is African.muses.
Okay.
African.muses. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And there are some interviews on there as well, and that is what the exhibition in August will be about.
Okay.
So people can check out some of the work there. A lot of that is studio work as well, with the Godox 8100.
Okay, thank you very much. And there you have it. We have had a very lovely conversation with Mark, just delving into the art of documentary photography, seeing a bit of black and white, learning about light as well. And, whether it's shadows, it's highlights, whichever one you have, at the end of the day, it's the art we create. And we say thank you to Mark and goodbye for the moment. And we'll definitely catch up with Mark later on. So that's just Mark, ladies and gentlemen, that was there with us. But yeah, there's one thing that we also have to talk about before we actually leave the airways, and that's right here, ladies and gentlemen, the all new ML60 bi-color LED monolight. This is really great, and you can actually purchase it with a hand grip and just put in a couple of batteries and just hold it as you have it, quite affordable from Godox SA. And yes, you can definitely use my coupon code. Let me just bring that up onto the screen so that you have it, because at the end of the day, the one thing that Godox actually does is that they have your back. And yeah, there we go. You can use my coupon code, which is Gox Pakamani, and get yourself a sweet discount on that. But not to mention, without forgetting, yes, we also have a couple of events that Godox is having, and most notably, we're going to have Carl Daniels, our presenter for Getting to Grips, as well as one of the other creatives, Ashvia Maharaj, and they're going to be at Cloppers in Pretoria on the 27th of July. So be sure to catch them there. And yeah, on Tuesday, we're back on your screens again with Al and Getting to Grips. So hey, there's a lot that happens on this Godox Airways. But from my end for this evening, I want to bid you farewell and say, it's been a very good evening. It's been an informative one, but most importantly, the learn never stops. So this is me signing out for the evening, and I will join you again next week, Thursday, on Getting to Grips, and we look at the other side, as well as looking at, when we say the other side, we're going to be having none other than Molly Blue as our guest on the show. And yeah, thank you very much for tuning in, and have a very good weekend.